Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green 19 podcast. I'm Dominique Yates. I'm joined by Ryan Wood. We're back once again after a little bit of break from doing the podcast, but there's a lot of news and stuff that we can definitely hit on. But Ryan, I think it's kind of funny because you can say we're back by popular demand. You can say our tens of viewers wanted us to do another podcast, and
I think thousands in there. Should there be a thousands in there? Are we omitting a word, or is it? Did you say that right?
I said tens. 5 of them are my relatives. So, yeah, you had people tweeting at you asking when we're going to podcast, and it was funny. It seemed like player after player, it was like they were coming in, dropping all of this news, and we're kind of like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and do a podcast because there is a lot that we can run through.
This has been a newsy OTAs, and I'll be honest, at this point, this is my 12th season covering this team. They all kind of blend together, but this seems to be a bit of a news year from Jordan Love and discussing the knee injury last year to Jayden Reed cleaning up the report about finding clarity of Brian Gutekunst with his status in the offense to, Zach Tom's going into a free agency year last year of his contract on down the line. Kenny Clark and Lucas Van Ness, their injury situations last year, which I'll say we're more significant than I thought, especially with Kenny Clark. There's been a lot of things, but Dominique, it has been a minute since we have done this podcast, but some things don't change. Last time I think we potted was after the NFL draft here in Green Bay, when it was very much decidedly basketball season, and it's still basketball season here in June. Boom, baby.
Let me just drink some water while you go on your spiel about the Pacers. Okay,
Dominique knows that I have not shut up about this 1 second. I am absolutely riding the wave here and loving every moment of it.
And I just have fun and just yell like OKC in 6 just to do it. I just hope it's a good finals, which I do believe it will be. So, I mean, you got some star stud, like you got the future stars. I think that's what I love about this finals. It's not the same old guys. It's the new stars emerging.
Is SGA from Kentucky? I haven't heard you say that yet.
Reportedly. Yeah. But it's funny. People have even asked me about that, so I remember interviewing him because he wasn't as good. He was coming off the bench for that Kentucky team, but he just got hot. Yeah,
that blows my mind. That's mystifying. Maybe he can come off the bench for the finals. If he reverted to not being as good, I'd be very okay with that for 2 weeks.
Hey, with your boy Halliburton, he's going to have to play the full game. So
Wisconsin's home.
That's true.
Wisconsin,
they don't own him. Yeah. They don't claim him at all. So it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that final. So now let's just run into a lot of Packers football talk. And, man, we can start so many areas. And, we can talk OTA observations and when we can just kind of run down the line. But honestly, the more pressing news was what the players told us. And let's take it with Jordan Love. The whole narrative about him taking a step back and not being as good, I just, in my honest opinion, in ways I felt that was a lazy take because of all of the injuries and what he had to play with and had to deal with throughout the season. And when you look at the numbers, they're pretty much the same, and they won more games. So the whole narrative about him not being as good and struggling, I can't get into that narrative. Now, if the argument was he didn't take the step that was expected, I will agree with you. But the whole thing about him not just being as good at taking a step back, I wasn't with that narrative. What were your takeaways from Jordan Love's conversation when we talked with him?
Would you believe it, Dominique, if I told you that Jordan Love's passer rating in 2024 was actually higher than 2023?
Yeah.
96.7 last year. His first year was 96.1. So not dramatically so, but I think what you just said is exactly the accurate way to put it. Jordan Love did not take a step back in his second NFL season. He just didn't take much of a step forward. Now, you can investigate why was that? Because I think that's very clear. He did not take that dramatic year 2 leap that after the way the 2023 ended, I think a lot of people were hoping for him to take, and it just never happened. I thought Matt LaFleur made a really good point when he was talking about, look, everyone's going to just look at the raw numbers and say, he wasn't as good. He missed 3 games. Essentially, he missed the first 2, week 2 and 3, against the Colts and Titans, which, by the way, are 2 poor defenses, poor football teams. I would have been right to put up some numbers against. Just look at what Malik Willis did. He missed those two immediately after the knee injury, the sprained MCL in week 1 against the Eagles. He missed the second half against Jacksonville because as soon as that knee finally started feeling better, he goes and pulls his groin, week 7. And then he missed the second half of the finale against the Bears with that ulnar nerve pinch that he went into the playoffs a week later against the Eagles with. So 2, I'm terrible at math. This is why I write. Okay, so bear with me. But 2 plus 0.5 plus 0.5 is 3. And if you extrapolate that out to what he did in 2023, playing all 17 games, 2023, he throws 4,100 yards. Extrapolate 2024 out to all 17, he's 4,100 yards. 2023, he had over 30 touchdowns. 2024, extrapolate that out. That's over 30 touchdowns. In 2023, the longest interceptionless streak that he had was 4 games. He shut it down after throwing those 11 picks. Most of those while dealing with the knee injury and the immediate aftermath of that injury. He shut it down. He ended the season with 7 straight games without a pick until none of his receivers could get open in Philadelphia, and he threw 3. So it was not a step back. It was not a step forward either. He needs a step forward this fall. He also needs to stay healthy. Now, I thought the one question that he had to be asked here when we met with him late May, the first OTA day, was, okay, now the rigors of the season, the pressure, the need to protect yourself against every defensive lineman that's looking to take a hit on you this week is gone. We're in the middle of the offseason. How much did that knee really affect you? And for the first time, Jordan Love came out and said, yeah, I mean, it was never really right. He took the stabilizer, the knee stabilizer, the brace off sometime late in the season. But even still, it wasn't like it was chronic pain like all the time. But the worst part, and anyone that's getting over an injury knows, especially when you have to be active, it's not that you're always in pain. It's when is that pain going to come out of nowhere, not knowing what kind of specific body movement's going to bring that pain. And when you're an NFL quarterback, there's a lot of different body movements that you have to make. He didn't know when that pain would be there, if he ran this way, cut that way, and when it wouldn't. And so that uncertainty certainly plays a part in that as well. He said that it took a couple weeks of just shutting his body down after the season to really feel back to whole. But he's good now. So the Packers need to keep this guy clean. They need to keep this guy protected. What have they done this offseason? They beefed up their offensive line. They moved Elton Jenkins to center. He's not here at the OTAs, but he's going to be here for training camp. He's going to be an upgrade at center over Josh Myers. They signed Aaron Banks to a hefty free agent contract to make sure that left guard position is secure. They drafted a first-round offensive lineman in Jordan Morgan last year, came back and went heavy on offensive line again in the second round with a big guy, Anthony Belton. So they've got depth. They've got you feel confident about their top 5. But part of that's for Josh Jacobs, but another part of that's just to keep Jordan Love upright and keep him healthy, because a healthy Jordan Love, you would expect to take that year 3 jump.
I guess you made a great point. The games that he missed coming back from Brazil with Tennessee and Indianapolis. You know how a football season works. It's a long season. Early in the games, those are your cleanup games. Those are your opportunities to kind of get some kinks out of the way and get into a rhythm, into a flow. He wasn't able to do that. And I think he comes back and has to play Minnesota, I believe, one of the best defenses in the NFL. So he never really had his chance to get in a true rhythm and, like you said, play healthy. So it'll be interesting to see what a healthy Jordan Love looks like and just the opportunities in place, because in observations from OTAs, there's no pads, it's not full speed, but you still have to throw the ball. You still have to connect with receivers. And right now, he looks incredibly comfortable, very confident, and he seems like he has command, at least of the offense right now, from my vantage point. What have been your observations from just what you've seen in OTAs during 2-minute, 7-on-7, and some of the drills that they've done?
The offense has looked better in 2-minute this spring than it did during OTAs last year. I thought the defense had the upper hand a year ago during these 2-minute drills, which, let's be clear, this isn't football yet. And I say it every year, but it bears repeating that these are workouts. These are workouts in shorts. They're wearing a helmet, but that's the only actual football equipment, helmet and cleats. Like that's it. Not until they put the pads on in camp are they actually practicing real football. But the 2-minute drill is the 2-minute drill. I mean, that's always something to track. And Jordan Love and the second open media viewing OTA can finish the 2-minute drill with a 30-yard touchdown bomb to Jayden Reed. Now, Jayden Reed beat Kalen King on that route. It wasn't exactly going against an NFL starting corner, but that's what you should do. Is if you have that matchup, you should hit it, and they did. He's been good in both of his 2-minute drills that we've seen, Jordan Love. The thing that Matt LaFleur challenged Jordan Love to do better, to do more of going into this offseason, into next season, his third year, was to use his voice more, not just as a hard count. We've seen that, on the field, but as a leader and to use to speak up more with his teammates. And we've seen that on the practice field already. This first OTA day that we saw during the break, it was him, Josh Jacobs, talking with Edgerrin Cooper, who is an up-and-coming star on the defensive side. We've seen him kind of take guys aside and have conversations with them. That's huge. I mean, we'll see how it portends to the season. Like, I still want to get there before we make any real grand claims. But this is Jordan Love's team. He is the guy. And not only the difference between now and 2023, when he was also the guy, is that he's earned that now. He hasn't just been given this opportunity. He's done something with it. Now he needs to do more, and we'll see if he will.
Yeah, so I do really want to see what that next step looks like. They talked about having good footwork, and now if he's healthy, when will he run the ball? So I'm wondering, even now, the new connection with Sean Mannion, his new quarterbacks coach, what will that relationship look like? He's a guy that's not far removed from the NFL. Are there some, little, things that he'll be able to show him along the way? So it's a big year for Jordan Love, and I've said it, you've said it, we've all said it. This team will go as far as Jordan takes them. And like we've said, he does need help along the way. So we can transition now and talk about the wide receivers. And we can start with Jayden Reed. It was the report, wanting clarity on his role with the Packers offense, with Matthew Golden and, Savion Williams and all of them coming in. He addressed it head on. He even made a joke about it. He said, I knew that, this was going to come up. I knew y'all had some things you wanted to talk about. What were your takeaways on that? Because really it all just kind of boiled down to he has a new agent. The new agent was wanting to build just a line of communication.
The weird thing about that report from Adam Schefter about wanting to clarify his status after the draft was that this is a statusless receiver group. There is no number one receiver. It's a big reason why they went out in the first round and drafted Matthew Golden, to give them more options. Not that they're automatically dubbing Matthew Golden their number one. He'll have to earn that like anyone else, but they haven't had one, and they want more options to get one. That was the thinking behind Matthew Golden. And to a lesser extent, even Savion Williams, just getting more cracks at filling that spot atop the depth chart. If Jayden Reed had a problem with his status, he hid that real good, because he said all the right things. He said that to him, number one receiver is an overblown term. Now, I take that with a grain of salt, because the reality is that all of these receivers, there's so many young, talented guys in this passing game. They're all on their rookie deal. Football is first and foremost a business. They're all vying for that lucrative second contract in the league. Jayden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, everybody is vying for that. Tucker Kraft. Until they change the rules of the game where they only allow one football, or where they allow multiple footballs at a time, that's going to be something for this offense to sort through, because you can only throw it to one guy. And Jordan Love has been nothing but egalitarian as a quarterback. He has always said he will throw it to who's open, and it's not just lip service, because if you watch him play, he reads the offense and he throws to who he deems to be open, regardless of matchup, most of the time. So that's something they're going to have to sort through this fall. But Jayden Reed said that this meeting was already scheduled between Drew Rosenhaus, his recently hired agent, and Brian Gutekunst, the team, before the draft. He said that this is kind of a customary discussion whenever Drew Rosenhaus told him whenever he takes on a new client, he meets with the team and he asks, okay, what's the situation here? Just to get a lay of the land. And that's what this meeting was. So believe him at face value, but that doesn't exactly settle the issue either. And not that it's a Jayden Reed issue. it's everybody vying for that second contract, only one football. Like, how are they going to navigate that? I think is a primary question going into the season.
That's true. And I think the numbers, I think there were 3 or 4 receivers last season that had more than 50 targets. Like you brought up the point, Jordan Love, he spreads the wealth. Like he'll share the love to anyone who's open, and you saw that and how he'll utilize tight ends and receivers. So the key is Jordan Love is going to find a way to get you the ball. What do you do with it is up to you. You can't drop the ball. You have to be more clear and consistent. So that's going to be the challenge for all of these receivers. And at one point, Jayden Reed was the guy. There was no question about that. Had some injuries as well. He said he feels healthy. He's in a good place. But I think that's the challenge really for every single receiver. From week 1 to the playoffs to the regular season finale, it doesn't matter. How do you produce? How do you step up? You can't disappear sometimes. And Jayden Reed said, I don't care if I only get 2 targets, 1 game. As long as we win, that's all that matters. It could be good lip service, but we'll see.
The Packers need him to have more than 2 targets a game for them to be their best offense. There's no number one receiver, but he has been their most productive. He has been their best receiver. And when you have a best receiver, you need to give him the ball more than twice a game. Like that's absolutely true. But it's also true that, for Jayden Reed, and he alluded to this, his focus needs to be on sustaining 17 good games in a row. He hasn't done that. He came out hellfire and fury to start last year. It looked like, okay, there is a number one receiver here. His name is Jayden Reed. And then he dissipated throughout the course of the year. He didn't sustain that. And Jayden Reed even alluded to the real problem there. He said, I had way too many drops. Every day this offseason, he said that he's been on the jugs machine. Now, it's one thing to catch balls off a jugs machine. It's another thing to catch balls in a live setting when there's a nickel or a safety cracking down on you, ready to put you in the ground. Like that's the real challenge there. But he knows the issue. Like for as good as he's been in these first 2 years, and he's been very good, there's still another level that he needs to get to, and that is where his focus is and where it needs to be.
And another guy is Romeo Doubs, who can you do it the whole season? And obviously he did have the 2 concussions late, and we did talk to him, and typical Romeo Doubs fashion, he's a little more closed off, keeps it to the vest, doesn't like to share a lot of things. And out of respect, we understand that. But I will say that one thing that stood out to me, he was asked about the suspension and how that all played out, where he just didn't come to practice after the reports that he wasn't happy with his role in the offense. And he was asked, do you wish you handled that differently, or would you next time? He said, I'll be honest, yes. And I'll do a better job of communicating, which I do. You say you can appreciate that transparency. So that's a guy too that I'm just really going to keep an eye out on. Like, is his, not pun intended, like, is his head going to be in the game each and every week, and will he produce? Because when Romeo Doubs is on, I always think back to that Seattle game, his first game back from suspension. He was the man.
Concussion.
Yeah, like he was the man. And he was really, really good. Had several touchdowns. He was running over defenders. So he's another guy when he's on, like, it just adds more weapons to this offense. And, Matt LaFleur was complimentary of him. Said he looks really good. I think he said he looks like a specimen in terms of his workouts. His body's in a good place. And he's another guy in workouts. He's moving along well. And him and Jayden Reed have been complimentary of the young receivers. Doubs himself said Matthew Golden is a stud. So it seems like they are building some camaraderie, at least from what they're telling the media, and they're at least taking those steps and trying to grow and, I guess, doing what it takes for this offense to be much better than it was last season, especially at least in the passing game.
Yeah, Romeo Doubs did a good job last year, I thought, after the suspension of putting that behind him and continuing his year. He was never a problem after that we know of, certainly not publicly. And, I mean, he's a quiet guy. We all know what to expect from him in the locker room. And that's why the suspension was so surprising. To me, the bigger question is the concussions. Because when you have 2 in less than 2 months, that's not good. And Romeo Doubs didn't want to talk much about the concussions. So we don't know really his processing this offseason. But that has to be a concern. Like when that is, by definition, it is what it is. It's a concern. So keeping him healthy is obviously very important. He's going to play a factor in this offense for sure. The big question here is Matthew Golden and how quickly he can come up to speed. Again, these are workouts. It's not football, but you can get a sense in workouts for how a guy moves on the field. You can get a sense for how they play their position. The thing that's jumped off the field in these first 2 practices, that's the key phrase, right? First 2 practices. Like, let's not stop the presses here. But everyone that's ever coached Matthew Golden will tell you he catches the ball so naturally. He has excellent hands, and we've seen that. He hasn't dropped a single pass yet. He's been put in, on Tuesday, he had a catch in the 2-minute drill from Malik Willis, and then he goes with the starters. He has a catch from Jordan Love. I would like to do anything in life as smoothly as Matthew Golden catches a football. He makes it look so effortless, and that's huge because on this receiving core that we're returning from last year, he's about the only one that you can say has those sure hands. Everyone else, that was their big issue. Christian Watson's really the only one that had great hands. Tucker Kraft had great hands too, but they need more just security around Jordan Love, making the simple plays. Receiver, the first part of being in that position is receiving the football, and Matthew Golden's he's looked like a natural doing that. So how quickly he can get the offense and the speed of the game at this level is going to be important. But from just a primary basic standpoint, his fielding is pretty solid.
I mean, that's part of the battle. Obviously, the next level is how can he handle the physicality and pick up on the playbook. But in terms of as a rookie, what does he look like? And like you said, in those workouts, his route running, like his footwork is very impressive. And like even, our own Pete Doherty, who's been around for a very long time, seen a lot of good receivers come here. He was impressed with how he's caught the ball, just the way, like I said, just like he's a very smooth, polished, like his technique is very impressive. And even his coaches have talked about that. And LaFleur said he's impressed with how he just comes about his business, each and every day into the workouts. And like you said, his team, like Jordan Love and the other receivers, they've been complimentary about his approach to things, not coming in like, I was the first-round draft pick and all this. And like, no, he's coming in to learn and to get better. And it's a big piece for him. And I guess that was what I looked at because when I watched Savion Williams, like he's not as polished yet as a wide receiver. He's still working on his footwork, how to properly catch the ball, all of those little things that they're still working on. Matthew Golden just a little bit, step ahead in that regard. So, that's the next step in training camp. Put the pads on, maybe, lines up against Keyshawn Nixon or someone like that, or maybe, see Xavier McKinney or one of the safeties. Like, how will he handle it and how will he respond? But at least can you check off how you performed in OTAs? He's at least done that. So at least that is part of the battle in terms of jumping into the NFL. So let's jump into some other – you got any last thing on that before we can jump into some other things?
No, I can talk more about the Pacers if you want.
Okay, so some other injury news. The two that, again, stood out from Tuesday were Kenny Clark and Lucas Van Ness. For Lucas Van Ness, it was the thumb. Kenny Clark, it was a foot injury. And Kenny Clark said that he had surgery in January on his foot. And what really was just like mind-blowing was this injury takes us back to Brazil. He was critical of the fields in Brazil. He said they were trash, and now we know why. He hurt his foot in that game. So for a guy that was known as always being explosive, because we talked about maybe he's a little bit step slower. I guess now we know why he was a step slower because of his explosiveness. He was playing basically with one, like I say, not all 10 of his toes.
Well, I'm just glad to know that I'm not crazy here. Because I do the postseason grades every year, and I break down every single play, offense, defense, and special teams from the prior season. Watched all 800 plus Kenny Clark snaps, and I've been doing this for years. I've seen every Kenny Clark play of his entire career, and I have never seen even close to what Kenny Clark did last year. I guess didn't do last year. The key to his game and what, 2023 was his best year. It was the best year he ever had. Career high 7.5 sacks. He was constantly behind the line of scrimmage, and the key to that is his explosiveness. Like he plays I've said this before. He plays the defensive tackle position like a running back. Like he's got that kind of burst, and it was completely vacant last year. It made no sense because he's played a lot of football, but even now he's not 30 yet. Like he's still a young NFL veteran, and it's not time for Father Time to catch up to him at this point. It made no sense until Kenny Clark says, yeah, I had foot surgery in January after the season. I had bone spurs in my big right toe, a little bunion, and I had to get that cleaned up. And I asked Kenny Clark, okay, so for a guy that plays the game like you do, where speed is everything, did that just, not having that burst with your foot, how hard was that to overcome? And he said, it's a lot bigger than that. It's not just the speed. It was every step. Every single step that he took on those 800 plus snaps last year was painful, which meant that he didn't have that quick get off. He also couldn't dig his feet into the ground, get leverage, use his power, and move blockers, as we've seen him do so many times for so many years. He was not the same player because he was never healthy. And then it all kind of comes together, right? With Lucas Van Ness, he had the broken thumb last year, which at the time, a year ago, it delayed his start in OTAs, was described as a minor injury. Different than Kenny Clark. Like Kenny Clark was playing through pain. Not sure that Lucas Van Ness had that same level of pain, but until week 11, he had a cast on his right hand. And I asked Rashawn Gary, like, you're a pass rusher. I imagine you have an idea what it'd be like to play one-handed at that position. What would that be like? And he said, if you don't have these, if you don't have your hands, you don't have anything. You've got absolutely nothing. Defensive line play is all about the hands. And Lucas Van Ness, for more than half the season last year, had one hand. And it changed how it restricted how he could play the game. He could only line up on the right side because that inside hand, that left hand, he had the ability to use leverage. He couldn't get the same leverage on the left side with that inside right hand. So he's only rushing from one spot. Already this offseason, we've seen that change. Not only is he on both sides, both edges, but we saw him in the second team 2-minute drill, dip inside and take interior snaps, which I think is going to be important for him. He's got the size to play interior, and we know that Jeff Hafley is multiple and likes versatility. Lucas Van Ness is kind of built in a lab for Jeff Hafley to be versatile with. Like he's got the size for defensive tackle, and he's got the length to play on the edge. So lining up more spots first and foremost. When you look at what Brian Gutekunst said at the owners' meeting, when he had sat out free agency at edge rush, and he maybe didn't know it then, but he would essentially sat out the first 2 days of the draft at edge rush, which we all thought was this roster's biggest area of need. When you look at what he said, which was, we expect internal improvement, dramatic, significant internal improvement from the pass rushers we have. And then you think, okay, Kenny Clark for a full season was playing on one foot. Lucas Van Ness for 3/4 of a season was playing with one hand. If you had two members of this defensive front that absolutely needed to have the biggest internal improvement, it would be Kenny Clark and Lucas Van Ness. Together, they only had 4 sacks last year, only 1 for Kenny Clark. Those are the two guys going into 2025 where the Packers absolutely need internal improvement. And they're the two guys that it's just logical stand to have the biggest internal improvement if they stay healthy. It kind of clears up Brian Gutekunst's thinking there, why he was confident that internal improvement is coming, because you got one guy with 1 foot, other guy with one hand. It's just got to come if they stay healthy.
And now they put the pieces in place in terms of with not only depth, but hiring DeMarcus Covington as the defensive line coach, a guy that has a lot of experience, was with the Patriots. He's had experience as, defensive coordinator. He's coached and played offense. So he's a guy that has been out there very active. I've observed him during OTAs. He's out there with pads on. And it's so, I guess, ironic because I actually had my camera zoomed in on him during during the drill that he had, and he was yelling at them, hands, got to use your hands, got to use your hands. So
now Lucas Van Ness can. Now yes. He can use his hands, plural, you know?
So now it's like an hour later, we're talking to Lucas Van Ness, and he's like, I played with one hand. So now it's like they're back to like that even like level playing field. So he hasn't denied he has to take a big step. You know, he's going into year 3. You know, they have invested. They say they didn't go out and try to get a Trey Hendrickson or insert guy to, you know, kind of replace him. They have a lot of faith in him. So it's going to be interesting to see what that leap looks like. And Kenny Clark seems motivated. Rashawn Gary, like those guys seem motivated because, you know, they heard all the talk about the pass rush. But even though it's not going to be all reliant on getting 4 to the quarterback, they're still wanting – there's still going to be, say, eyes on them to get the job done with that pass rush.
Well, there needs to be a leap for Lucas Van Ness because if there isn't, then after his 3rd NFL season, a guy that was drafted 13th overall, you're starting to think, okay, this guy's a bust. Right. Like that's where he is. And the difference between Lucas Van Ness and Kenny Clark is that Kenny Clark has 8 prior seasons of catalog on the field, film, showing that he is a dude, right? Lucas Van Ness had a really promising rookie year, but he doesn't have the same sample size to show that. The thing with Lucas Van Ness, though, is that he did have that promising rookie year. And in his second year, when it was a regression, he was playing predominantly with one hand. Now, both those guys played all 17 games last year, with so just I think we do need to caution just because they are healthy now. We don't really know how much those injuries did impact. I think probably significantly, but they were on the field. You're on the field at this level. There's no excuses. That's why neither Kenny Clark nor Lucas Van Ness wanted to use injuries as an excuse last year as the season was ongoing. They were on the field, and they didn't do much on the field. But Kenny Clark has that catalog to say, okay, he should revert back to the guy he's always been. We don't really know the guy Lucas Van Ness has always been. I mean, you think about his first 2 seasons, 2 different schemes, the injury. It's been a whirlwind start to his career. Now he's got a second year in the same system with Jeff Hafley. If he can have 2 hands, that should lead to that leap. If it doesn't, there is no excuse. That's when you start using the B word. That's when you start saying, that's a potential bust right there.
Yeah, so that's going to be very crucial because we even talked about a minute ago, you're getting into those contracts. You're getting into those, like, how are you going to get that second contract? And that's going to be a big tell. And I guess for me, one guy who, while he doesn't have that next contract, I don't think it'll be much question if he should get it. I would say Zach Tom. What have been just your impressions on seeing him out there, even in the midst of this, still practicing? And, he even talked to the media about it.
Yeah. Did you hear what he said? Because the way that they have this current, the locker room is closed for renovations this spring, which means that they have they bring 2 players into one room and one guy's on one corner, the other guy's on the other corner. And I did not have the Zach Tom corner. So I don't know if you've heard what he said, but the fact, like you said, he's out here. I remember Devontae Adams in the past has had a holdout, right? Got guys that are in line for a significant next contract. If an extension hasn't been reached yet, it is not uncommon to see them sit it out. And Zach Tom has not sat it out. He has been the pillar at right tackle like he's always been. Very clear. Matt LaFleur said that what makes Zach Tom special is that he can play all 5 at a high level. But that at this point, he has earned that home at right tackle. Like he has implanted himself there, and he will not be moving. He is your right tackle. It also means that he will be paid top of the market right tackle money in his next contract because he is a top of the market right tackle. So that, a year ago with all the could he move to center and all that intrigue and mystery that subsided. Like he is a right tackle. That's what he's going to be paid at. That's what he's going to play. But just the fact that he's out there, that's Elton Jenkins right now is not out there. And you understand why with Elton Jenkins, because he's been moved to center. The top paid center in the league, Creed Humphrey, is making $18 million a year. The top paid left guard in the league is making 21. The top paid right guard in the league is making 23. That's a substantial market adjustment when you move to center, and not in a positive way for that guy. He'll be here for training camp. Jordan Love said, yeah, I mean, he wants him here as much as possible because the one thing that Josh Myers always had was continuity, familiarity, and trust from his quarterback. Like center snap exchanges were never an issue with Josh Myers. There's plenty of other issues, but that was never an issue. Elgton Jenkins is going to have to gain that repetition and that familiarity to be as automatic with the center snap exchange with his quarterback, which is a big deal to Jordan Love. But he's played it before. He started there last year when the Detroit Lions came to town. Wasn't a great night for him. I think he had 3 bad snaps in that game. It was also a downpour. It was raining, so it wasn't exactly a great weather game to break in a new center. But Jordan Love said that he feels like training camp will be enough time, and it should be for a guy that's played as much as Elgton Jenkins.
And it makes sense, like you said, if you're Elgton Jenkins, he's like, hey, I have been a really good, consistent lineman from the beginning since I've been here. I don't want to be shortchanged on my money just because I'm being moved to a new position. It does make sense. But I did pull up Zach Tom's comments, and I'll just read it. He really just said, quote, I don't really think it will do me any good to sit out. I'm trying not to worry about the contract situation. I'm just trying to do what's best for the team. End quote. And there's a lot more in that. Our own Pete Doherty has a story on that you can find on Journal Sentinel and PackersNews.com. So that really is the name of the game. And like you said, that's kind of like a positive. And the coaches and Brian Gutekunst will see that. Like, okay, he really does want to look out what's best for the team. And he's a really good right tackle. And they believe he can play anywhere on the offensive line. So I don't think there'll be much issue in terms of trying to get him a new contract, my opinion. And I think like he's done enough on the field to do the job.
It's a no-brainer. They have no choice. They have to extend him with top of the market right tackle money. That is who he is, and he is way too important to this roster, to this offense, to that offensive line to mess around there. They've messed around in the past. They lost Devontae Adams because of that. You cannot lose that com.
Yeah. Now let's jump into Jaire Alexander talk. This is something that it changes anytime we do a podcast, every time we kind of check in. And it's a lot of interesting reporting, and I do want to hear from you too in terms of what your sources have told you in the matter last time you did some reporting on it. But one thing that I've really been fascinating in hearing, Keyshawn Nixon, he said, I would love to have Jaire back. We played together for so long. He's a really good player. Xavier McKinney, who talks to Jaire, he said pretty much daily. They've worked out together. Xavier McKinney posted a video of Jaire Alexander when they were working out. And I'll say just from the look, Jaire looks in good shape, got some muscle on him. So he looks really good. And even if you read between the lines with Xavier McKinney, he seems like Jaire wants to come back. And everyone on board, from Jordan Love to everyone on the defense, would love to have him back. So even for me, I kind of want to backtrack a little bit because I always thought if he came back, it might be awkward for everyone within the defense. Obviously, what you say in the media compared to what's in the locker room can be different instances. But I would imagine this team realizes that they're good regardless. I mean, you saw what they were still able to do without Jaire Alexander last year. But with the healthy Jaire Alexander on this defense, they're only just going to be better because of his skill set, his ability to just play on an island and guard or just defend the opposing team's best receiver. What were your takeaways from just the reporting on Jaire Alexander with the contracts and maybe even what you've heard from the players throughout OTAs?
Yeah, I think the way you said it is right. They're good regardless. They're better with a healthy Jaire Alexander because Jaire Alexander a year ago had the best start of his career. He had the pick week 1 in Brazil against the Eagles. Then he had the first pick 6 of his career week 3 against the Titans. He was off to the best start he's ever been on, which is saying something because he's always been there's a reason why this guy a few years ago was paid as the top cornerback in the NFL history, right? He's always been that guy. When healthy, when motivated. And so they're better with him. Jaire Alexander expects to be at mandatory minicamp next week. He is going to be here with the team. You expect Elgton Jenkins also will be here. And to your point about how this saga goes over in the locker room really does seem to be all behind Jaire Alexander and him coming back, probably because they realize they're good regardless, but they're better with him. It's not just lip service. It's not just saying the right things. Xavier McKinney worked out with the guy. Like they spend time away from Green Bay during the offseason. They are close. So and Keyshawn Nixon, same thing. Like he's always been close with Jaire Alexander. So I don't think there's any issue if Jaire Alexander comes back. There's no mystery that he'll be embraced and welcomed with open arms inside that locker room. The longer he's on this roster, the higher the chances that he will be on the roster this fall, right? And now they can always do the post June 1 release and save some money on their 2026 cap, even more money. But at this point, their cap figures are pretty locked in. They know where they're at. They know where they're going to be. It sure seems like the tides are turning there to where it's much more likely, unless there's something unforeseen, that Jaire Alexander will be on this roster in 2025. This thing has taken so many twists and turns, so it's hard to say anything definitive because it has been what's Matt LaFleur's favorite word? Fluid. It's been a very fluid situation. Yeah. But the longer this draws out this way, the higher the probability that he is going to be a corner in this secondary, which means, okay, they went out and they signed Nate Hobbs during the spring, in large part because they didn't know on Jaire Alexander. They needed another starting caliber body at that position. Now they have that. You have Jaire Alexander, Keyshawn Nixon, who proved last year he can be a very solid perimeter corner. You've got Nate Hobbs, who all of a sudden, if Jaire Alexander is back, is going to be playing more inside, more slot snaps, which just to highlight how differently things have changed. When Nate Hobbs signed here in March, it was told to him that playing perimeter was very likely. And not that he would never play inside slot, but that he was going to have more perimeter snaps than ever before. Why? Because this team did not expect Jaire Alexander to be back. What have we seen? We didn't see Nate Hobbs. He had a personal matter in the second OTA day on Tuesday. That first OTA day, what do we see? He was playing almost exclusively inside, which is where he's going to be playing because you're not moving Keyshawn Nixon back inside. We've seen Keyshawn Nixon inside. We've seen him on the outside enough to know that he is a perimeter corner. Jaire Alexander is going to be outside. The opening now is the slot. That's where we saw Nate Hobbs taking almost all of his reps. Probably not a coincidence there. They have depth. Carrington Valentine is a tremendous depth piece. Javon Bowler, like the whole offseason, as it looks like Jaire Alexander won't be back, as soon as they sign Nate Hobbs, it seemed pretty clear. Well, you have Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, and then you've got Javon Bowler on the inside at nickel, which is where his best position was last year, better than deep safety. And it made sense because just the depth chart on paper, you've got Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams on the back end at safety. You've got Zane Anderson, who's showed last year he can be a solid depth piece rotating off the sideline for either one of them at safety. You've got a lot of numbers in this secondary now. Another good reason why they waited until the 7th round to draft a corner in Micah Robinson. If Jaire Alexander's back, they don't need more corners. They're really set at that position. So that's a good problem to have, getting everyone on the field. But that you can never have enough good corners, and they sure seem to have enough.
That is true, and I think that is the biggest thing. They are very much in place and prepared to get out there and play with or without Jaire, like you said, because even if you just ran through every guy that could be a starter, that could be a reserve, that can be a depth piece, and Javon Bullard, that's going to be a guy I'm very interested to see where he kind of fits.
Where he plays, yeah,
because maybe he'll rep some at nickel, and maybe his secondary position might be, free safety behind Evan Williams. Like, I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see him because he was obviously able to practice during that second OTA on Tuesday because Hobbs was out with the personal matter. So he's one of those guys I'm wondering where his role and where he'll kind of find a way, because there were plenty of times last season as a rookie, you saw the aggressiveness that he played with. And when he is free flowing, especially playing inside, he can do some really good things. So he's the guy I'm wondering where his role is going to kind of where he'll kind of find his spot in this.
Well, there's competition here.
Yeah.
If Keyshawn Nixon takes a step back, he was quite good in 2024. If he takes a step back, there's Carrington Valentine waiting to take those snaps. If Nate Hobbs takes a step back, there's Javon Bullard, or vice versa. Javon Bullard takes a step back. there's Nate Hobbs. If Evan Williams takes a step back after his really solid rookie year, there's Javon Bullard. There's competition everywhere in this secondary, which another word for competition is contingencies. Like if they have injuries, if they have poor performance, they have contingencies to compensate for that.
Yeah. I guess as we wrap it up, are there any some final things that you're wanting to touch on, or even anything that you're curious about? And another player for me, while you think about it, for me that I'm curious to see in terms of what's next, really it's two guys. It's Marshawn Lloyd and Luke Musgrave. When I look at Marshawn Lloyd and Musgrave, they're both out there practicing. They've had some even good moments in throughout the workouts. And for me, with these guys, is just, can you keep them healthy? Because Marshawn Lloyd and Musgrave have had so much bad luck. Even with Marshawn Lloyd, LaFleur said he came back, when the season was over, he got back to work, he was training. Then even during this offseason, he said he had another setback. So this guy, from all the injuries and even the not the tonsils, what he had, the appendicitis, like he just had so much bad luck. And even Musgrave with a lacerated kidney and the ankle. So it's just going to be interesting to see what it looks like for them when they're healthy. And because you see what they're capable of doing, Musgrave stretching the field, Lloyd with the level of explosiveness, much even different from Josh Jacobs. So those are two guys I would really, I'm curious what it looks like if they can stay healthy and go through this season. Is there any, final things from you, maybe even any players that you're curious to see heading into training camp in the season?
Yeah, I think it's notable that we have not seen Jordan Morgan take a single guard rep in 2 days of OTAs. He has been left tackle behind Rasheed Walker. He has been right tackle behind Zach Tom. Very different than a year ago, where he almost instantly, after Matt LaFleur had said immediately after the draft that he was going to start, and he didn't say this, but the term is fail him at left tackle first before you move inside. That did not happen. He almost instantly was inside at guard. We haven't seen a single guard rep from Jordan Morgan. He has been back at tackle. So I think that entire offensive line, how that shakes out, I have a hard time thinking Jordan Morgan's going to win the left tackle job over Rasheed Walker. Rasheed Walker has been a good, not great, but a good left tackle the last 2 years. But what does happen is, one, they have depth, and two, they have contingencies if they don't re-sign Rasheed Walker. That's where they're repping Jordan Morgan right now. We'll see how that offensive line shakes out. But the other thing too, I think, is because when you look at this offense, they have a plethora of playmaking options in the passing game. They've got a quarterback that can get it to them. They've got Josh Jacobs behind that quarterback. They have a beefed up, enhanced offensive line. I asked Matt LaFleur, what do you want your offense to be? And he thought about it and said that's a hell of a question. And that's what they're kind of figuring out now. I think in many ways last year, the offense became what it was, which was obviously power run game. That had to their identity. It became that out of necessity because Jordan Love had the knee injury right out the gate. And all of a sudden, you've got Malik Willis, who's been here for all of 3 minutes, as your starting quarterback week 2 and week 3, and you got Josh Jacobs behind him. So, yeah, week 2, Malik Willis' first start, give the ball to Josh Jacobs 32 times, run it all over the Indianapolis Colts, right? It was the necessity thing, and they really unlocked something there. And it hit at the right time because they weren't the only ones in the league to unlock a staunch run game. Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl because of that. Derrick Henry with the Baltimore Ravens. That was their identity, their run game. Last year was a renaissance at running back, and the Packers were among the foremost to experience that. And yet they also have all those receivers. Tucker Kraft's a guy. They've got to figure out how to maximize him because he has the potential to be special. And he's also that classic inline tight end where he is foundational to their run game. So how do you unlock more playmaking for him while keeping what he does so well as a blocker? They're in the process right now of figuring out what they want to be on offense. And they can go, when you look at how this offense is constructed, they can go pretty much any which way they want to go. Like there's no dead ends here. How they bring that all together cohesively as an identity. I know it's only June, but that's going to be fascinating to watch once the fall comes, because there are so many options for them to go to. And I don't think Matt LaFleur specifically knows how that's going to shake out right now. That's going to be a process, but that's a good process to undergo.
Oh, it's going to be so interesting to see how it plays out. And I'm fascinated with it as well because, like you said, Josh Jacobs, he had 1,300 yards, career high 15 touchdowns, his first receiving touchdown. You can't all of a sudden go away from him, but you also have to just share the ball. Like I said, you only got one football. How it works is interesting because it is ironic because obviously we were critical at times of the offense. But when you look at the stats with total offense and points scored and pretty much how they would execute at times, they were still among some of the better teams in the NFL. But without question, there is an entirely different level that this offense could go. And you can go back to, you can say, the days of the Aaron Rodgers offense where no team scored more points during his time as a starter with the Green Bay Packers. So this team has a lot of weapons in place. What they do with them will be the story.
They can't go away from Josh Jacobs, but that'd be negligent. Don't do that.
Right.
But what Matt LaFleur did say in terms of what he wants his offense to be is explosive. And in this league, explosive plays come through the passing game. If you want to be explosive, unless you have Saquon Barkley, because what Josh Jacobs does for you, he keeps you on schedule. He can have some explosive runs, but his explosive run numbers they're not in the same stratosphere as Saquon Barkley. He keeps you on schedule. He gives you that foundation of moving the ball, moving the chains, so that you can then have those explosive plays in the passing game because the defense has to respect the run. If you want to be explosive, you have to throw the ball downfield. They're equipped for that. Can they do that at a higher level than they did last year is the question. But then, they go out and they draft 4.29 speed in Matthew Golden. They have those makings. It just needs to come together.
Mm-hmm. That is the key, and we'll look forward to what's in store because they have mini camp coming up next week, have a little bit of a break for a while, and then training camp will start in late July, and they'll get ready for preseason. Ryan, good catching up, good checking in on the podcast, and hey, I guess enjoy the finals. I will make sure I tell you that. Enjoy the finals. So thank you all for checking out the Green 19 podcast. For Ryan Wood, I'm Dominique Yates.